Inspiring moment revealed. Millionaire tests employee with open safe, discovering amazing honesty. Sarah Garcia stood behind the cashier counter of her small-town hardware store, her heart heavy under the weight of her responsibilities. With 2 young children at home and a father who needed her care, each hour on the clock felt like an endless battle. Her grin was infectious, a coping mechanism that turned customers into friends, but inside, doubt gnawed at her. How long could she keep juggling work and family without cracking? One ordinary Tuesday, everything changed. The new owner of the hardware store, a slick businessman named Tom, had transformed the place overnight. His sharp suits didn't team match the lumberyard-esque dusty vibe, and the townsfolk whispered about his ruthless ways. Little did Sarah know, behind the store's secure backroom lay a trap set to measure the integrity of his employees. An open safe filled with cash, surrounded by hidden cameras, awaited the unwitting star of his social experiment. As Sarah locked the register and prepared for a long shift, her fingers brushed against a door that had always been off limits. That day it creaked open. Her pulse quickened as she dared to peek inside and found the cash thousands of dollars, more than her family had ever seen. The turmoil of her finances rushed back. Tuition bills loomed, groceries were running low, and her father's medications needed paying. The temptation pressed against her, heavy and suffocating, but just outside the back room, her children's voices echoed in her heart. "Why can't we have nice things, Mom?" They had asked just last night, their faces twisted in confusion. They thought success meant having money, flashy cars, and new clothes. Sarah wanted to teach them about hard work, about honesty, about compassion for others. Yet here she stood before that cash, her very principles dangling like a thread, ready to unravel. Unbeknownst to her, Tom watched. As a businessman, he valued his empire, but he had grown weary of empty victories. He found himself captivated by Sarah, a woman who persevered with empathy in a world that often prized greed. Suddenly, his prejudices began to crumble, and he felt an odd sense of hope simmering just beneath the surface. Instead of manipulating others, he pondered the warmth of community he'd left behind. With shaky breaths, Sarah took a step back, choosing to report the open safe to Tom. "I couldn't keep this," she said, heart pounding in her chest. He watched her with astonishment, distinguishing her character through the lens of his test. Sarah's heart surged with pride. Thinking she could inspire her children with her values and honesty, they wouldn't have to see wealth as the only success. Before she could catch her breath, the air thickened. Tom confronted her about the purpose of his setup, revealing his intentions. The tension escalated, feelings flared, and just then, her children barged in, demanding answers. "Mom, what is going on?" Their confusion shattered the air like glass. A passionate debate ignited values versus survival, morals versus temptation. Each voice added to the cacophony of emotion, leaving the community shocked as spectators, tender for an ember of change. But in that moment, as everything hung in the balance, Sarah caught Tom's eye. Though the intensity surged like a wild current, an undeniable truth pulsed in the air. Honesty had a power beyond the dollars in that open safe. What would prevail here for her children, for the town? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach seriously. It makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Tom hesitated, a warmth flickered in his chest. Would he measure Sarah by her honesty, or condemn her for not taking the easy way out? The community pondered, a heartfelt silence enveloping them. Hope rippled through the room, but uncertainty lingered. Would they choose the light of honesty, or would the shadows of doubt and desperation pull them away from each other? The answer hung in the air like a question, waiting to explode into possibilities as the world shifted just slightly. The tension in the room felt like a storm about to break. Tom shifted, his sharp gaze locked on Sarah, whose heart raced like a runaway train. Her children stood wide-eyed, taking in the tempest of emotions swirling around them. Between breaths, the silence spoke volumes, questions lingered in the air, unspoken yet palpable. "Mom, are we in trouble?" one of her children finally asked, a tremor of innocence in their voice. Sarah's heart sank at the sound. She had always wanted to protect her children from the weight of adult choices, and yet here they were, thrust into the heart of her battle for integrity. Tom inhaled deeply. "Sarah, what do you want them to learn from this moment?" His voice was steady, but laced with a genuine curiosity. There was something awakening in him, a realization that transcended the transactional nature of his business mindset. What should she say? In that instant, Sarah felt the weight of her choices pressing down harder than ever. "I want them to know that honesty matters more than money, that it's our choices, not our circumstances, that define us." The words slipped from her lips, and she felt lighter, even as the gravity of her confession hung in the air. "Are you telling me," Tom said, disbelief flickering across his features, "that you'd rather walk away from what could change your life?" Sarah squared her shoulders. "You don't understand. This money may solve problems, but it won't solve who I am as a mother or the values I want to instill in my children. I refuse to let desperation dictate my morals." The community observers exchanged whispers, each word crackling with interest. Some looked on with admiration, while others wore frowns, wrestling with the notion of sacrifice in times of need. Then, the unexpected happened. One of Sarah's regular customers, an elderly man named Mr. Thompson, stepped forward. "I've been coming here for years, and I can tell you, Sarah's honesty has always shone through. This isn't just about her. It's about all of us. We don't need to turn to greed. We need to stand together." His words ignited a spark. Others nodded, murmurs of agreement bubbling up like a warm tide. Tom watched as the townsfolk rallied behind Sarah, their solidarity redefining the power dynamics of the store and of his own beliefs. As the emotional wave washed over him, Tom's resolve started to waver. He had entered this town looking to control, to dominate the market, but now he saw fragments of hope and community stitching together before his eyes. What if he began, hesitating as he weighed his next words? What if this money could be used differently? What if we invested in the community instead of taking from it? We could build something together. The idea hung between them like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. Sarah's gaze softened. This was more than a reaction to a test. It had sparked a dialogue about values. Shapes of change had emerged, threaded through loyalty, integrity, and a shared vision of a meaningful future. As her heart began to echo with renewed purpose, Sarah pondered, could they dare to build something that transcended individual struggle? What if their small-town destiny hinged on a single choice? But just as hope flickered in the air, a loud crash erupted from the front of the store. The moment was sliced apart, panic ensued, and a thick tension coiled once again. What had happened? Was the safe incident just the beginning? In that instant, everyone turned toward the noise, their expressions shifting, confusion casting shadows as uncertain futures loomed. What now? The air simmered with questions, and one thing was painfully clear. The stakes had changed, and together they would face whatever came next. The sound of shattering glass echoed in the small store, shrouding the room in an unexpected chaos. Everyone's heads turned toward the entrance, breath suspended in the air as confusion swept through the crowd like a wildfire. Sarah's heart raced anew, adrenaline coursing through her veins as she clenched her fists, willing herself to stay calm. Tom's expression shifted from curiosity to alertness, his focus sharpening. "Stay here," he instructed, already moving toward the source of the noise. "No, I'll go," Sarah found herself saying before she could second-guess. The urgency in her voice surprised even her. She couldn't let fear define this moment. After all, she wanted to show her children bravery alongside honesty. As they approached the front of the store, the sight that greeted them was one of both chaos and an unmistakable spark. A young boy, no more than 10, stood frozen in the doorway, surrounded by the shards of a fallen display. He held something in his tiny hands, a smashed baseball. Tears welled in his eyes, not from fear or guilt, but from raw shame. "I'm sorry," he exclaimed, his voice cracking under the weight of his own remorse. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted to try it." He pointed at the display of candy that lay scattered across the floor, twisted wrappers glimmering like confetti. Sarah's heart softened. She knelt down to the boy's level, her gaze warm and understanding. "It's okay, sweetheart. Accidents happen. Are you hurt?" He shook his head vigorously, wiping his tears with the sleeve of his coat. Tom approached cautiously, lowering his tone. "You have to be careful. It's important to ask permission before you take something." The boy nodded, embarrassment still evident. "I just got excited. I thought what?" Sarah prompted gently. "That I could help maybe earn some candy." His cheeks flushed a deep red as he glanced around at the lingering crowd, their eyes mixing sympathy with curiosity. A ripple of tension diffused in the store, transformed into murmurs of soft compassion. The community, once spectators, shifted to support mode. The back of the room. Mr. Thompson raised his voice. "Look at this young man. We all make mistakes. It's how we respond to them that counts. What if we all chipped in so he could earn that candy?" Someone in the crowd suggested, enthusiasm igniting in the faces around them. The atmosphere lightened as people began to rally, ideas flowing like a stream of kindness. "We could host a bake sale," came one suggestion, followed by nods of approval. Sarah glanced at Tom, whose brows were knitted in thought. The tension that once hung heavily in the air now transformed into a collective hope. He met her gaze, and for a moment, she saw a flicker of understanding, a realization about community and connection instead of mere commerce. As the crowd began to organize, discussing ways to support the boy and help him learn valuable lessons about responsibility and honesty. Sarah's heart swelled with gratitude. Perhaps this incident was a serendipitous moment, a reminder that their struggles had summoned the best of the town. "Let us hope this young man knows he is not alone in his mistakes," Sarah said softly to Tom, her eyes returning to the boy now enveloped in the caring hands of the community. But just when she thought the unfolding scene might mend the fractures around them, a loud siren broke through the warmth. The sound sent a fresh wave of anxiety rolling through the room. What now? Caught between the boy's mistake and an unforeseen emergency, Sarah felt the tension building once more. Everything could change again in an instant. How would they face it together? The siren's wail cut through the growing connection like a knife. Sarah's stomach sank. The cheer and unity in the room faded as quickly as it had bloomed, replaced by a thread of fear. What was happening outside? Tom shifted, the lines of worry deepening on his face. "I'll check it out," he murmured, but Sarah shook her head, instinctively gripping his arm. "Let us stay together." The young boy, still sniffling, looked up at them with wide eyes. He was a lost child in a swirl of adult explanations and misunderstandings. Sarah knelt back beside him, focusing her energy on reassuring him. "Hey, everything is going to be okay. Can you tell me your name?" "Ben," he whispered, his small voice barely cutting through the murmurs of concern building in the store. "Ben," she echoed, drawing a smile from him. "You're brave for showing up and talking about what happened. That takes courage." A few customers crowded near the entrance, craning their necks and whispering amongst themselves. The buzzing energy, once kind and collaborative, now felt ominous. One woman with bright red hair reached for her phone, her face pale. "I think it's an emergency. I heard gunshots." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating as a blanket. Gasps rippled through the store. Sarah's heart raced, her thoughts whirring. Her children were outside. They had been playing in a park just a block away. "No." She stood up, urgency igniting a fire in her stomach. "I need to find them." Tom grabbed her shoulder. "Wait, we don't know what is happening. We'll cause panic." Panic was already brewing. The crowd murmured louder, the tension thick enough to slice. What would they do? Stay hidden? Or rush them into danger? "Listen," Mr. Thompson called out, trying to anchor everyone with his sturdy presence. We need to stay calm. If they're SA situation, we need to stick together. But calm seemed impossible right now. As Ben clung to Sarah's leg, she felt a mixture of fierce protectiveness and helplessness. I can't just stand here. Tom's grip tightened on her arm. Let us methodically check for any news. We can't jump to conclusions. The old clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence that followed, marking each moment like a warning bell. With every second, anxiety seeped deeper into the air. Then, a voice broke through the crowd. Everyone move to the back. Get away from the windows. A store employee gestured anxiously as sirens blared outside, chaos shifting outside to in. Sarah's heart pounded. The safe haven was turning into a claustrophobic cage. The people they had come together to support were now scattered, and the threat was unfurling in front of them. "Mommy?" came a shaky voice, and Sarah's heart dropped. She turned to see her little girl, Amy, peering from the back of the store, her wide eyes spilling with unshed tears. "Mom." A raw warmth surged through Sarah, flooding her with urgency. She tore toward her daughter, enveloping her in a protective embrace. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here." Ben watched them, still standing near the front, uncertain. For a flicker of a moment, against the backdrop of fear, a sense of accomplishment washed over Sarah. She had faced a small battle, but now a bigger one loomed. How could they stay strong together in front of this new fear? As the store held its breath, Sarah glanced back at Tom. She saw he was already thinking ahead. "We need to find out where to go from here," he said, urgency dripping from his words. But the last idea, she had the last sense of hope from the earlier moment of connection, flickered faintly in her mind. What if this community she tried to comfort could also save them? And among the frightened faces, it was Ben's determined expression that caught her attention. "If we really work together," but just as they began to find that resolve, the violent crack of a gunshot echoed beyond the store, shaking the very foundations of their shared sanctuary. Sarah's heart dropped. What next? The store erupted into chaos. Gasps morphed into cries as fear whipped through the crowd like a wildfire. Sarah held Amy tighter, desperately trying to shield her from the terror spilling into their sanctuary. She could see the panic on Tom's face, his fierce loyalty torn between staying put and rushing to the exit. "Everyone stay calm," Mr. Thompson shouted again, his voice shaking slightly with the strain of leadership. But his words seemed to have little effect. The voices grew louder, the tension in the air crackling like static. "Ben," Sarah called out, remembering the small boy who had looked to her for comfort. She scanned the store, her heart racing even faster. "Where's Ben?" A few terrified customers pointed toward the front, where Ben had been standing just moments ago. But now, he was nowhere to be seen. Panic clawed at her gut. "Tom," she said, fear trembling in her voice. "I need to find him." "Let us go together," he replied, his voice steadying hers as they moved toward the disorganized mess of legs and bodies. As they navigated the store, Sarah felt the heaviness of their surroundings pressing in. Shattered glass crunched beneath their feet, remnants of the peaceful refuge they had once shared. Then the atmosphere shifted again, a dull thud echoed from outside, followed by muffled voices. Something was happening, no doubt, and she needed to know. "Stay here, Amy," Sarah said, kneeling down. "I need you to be brave for me, okay?" "Okay," Mommy Amy replied, squeezing her eyes shut, trying to be strong for her mother. Pushing through the group of frightened customers, Sarah and Tom made their way to the front. The store's entrance had become a blockade of terrified faces, all desperate for answers. "Can we see?" a woman cried, peeking out. "Please," another added, her voice breaking. Time slowed as Tom pressed up beside Sarah, their shoulders brushing. They needed to act, to push through this fear together. But as Tom turned to reassure the crowd, the sharp crack of another gunshot rang out, bouncing off the walls like a funeral bell. "Down! Everyone down!" Sarah yelled, instinctively dropping to her knees. The crowd complied, a wave of panic crashing through them. She felt Amy grasping the edge of her shirt, as though just holding on could keep them safe. Stay low, sweetheart. I want tea, let anything happen to you, Sarah whispered, her heart pounding in her chest. They huddled together, searching for any sign of Ben, a glimmer of hope made more fragile by uncertainty. But the store was filled with hushed breaths and pausing hearts. In that moment, the boy's determined face came back to her. He had been looking for connection, for reassurance. Tom, Sarah murmured, her mind racing. If we don't get everyone organized, we're going to lose control entirely. We need to lead. We need to find Ben, gather everyone together, make this a collective effort. He nodded solemnly, understanding her urgency. What do we do? She drew in a deep breath, channeling her fear into strength. We become the comm center. We guide them. It's what this community needs right now. Just as they prepare to rise, she noticed the employees shifting nervously by the back rooms. One of them caught her eye, and for a split second, their glance offered a flicker of hope. "Hey, you," Sarah called out, beckoning the young man to come forward. But before he could respond, another shot rang out, louder this time, like thunder crashing through their fragile world. The collective gasp of fear washed over them again. The moment stretched long and painful, filled with unanswered questions and dread. Where was Ben? What was happening outside? As reality pressed in, Sarah felt a sudden chill skitter down her spine. Was help on the way? Or was this just the beginning? The store's air thickened with tension, the sound of frantic breaths filling the space. Sarah's heart raced painfully against her ribcage as she clasped Amy's small hand tighter. Every second felt like an eternity, a lead weight dragging her deeper into despair. "Tom, we have to," she started, but his eyes were already scanning the crowd, searching for any hint of Ben. They had to move. They had to act. "Stay here," he said, firm yet calm. "I'll check the back. You keep an eye on him going with you." She interrupted, fear igniting her resolve. "I can't just wait here." Tom hesitated. Behind them, the shaking murmurs of the crowd heightened her anxiety. She could see the uncertainty in his eyes, but he nodded. "Fine. We'll check the back together." They crept toward the staff-only area, hoping to find Ben or anyone who could shed light on the chaos outside. Suddenly, the air shattered with another gunshot, this one ringing closer, almost intimate. It sent a shock wave through the store, and the crowd flinched as one. "Go, now," Sarah urged, her voice barely a whisper, spurred by gut-wrenching fear. They pushed through the flimsy door, marked staff only, the air thick with tension and a faint scent of cleaning supplies. A flickering overhead light revealed empty shelves and disorganized boxes. The sounds of muted chaos from the main area felt distant, almost unreal. "Ben," Sarah called out, her voice echoing against the stark walls. "There might be a back exit," Tom said, scanning the surroundings. "Let us check," but before he could finish, the emergency exit swung open, and a flood of employees rushed in, their faces pale and wide-eyed. "Is everyone okay?" One of them shouted, glancing nervously at Sarah and Tom. "We need to get everyone out." "Where's Ben?" Sarah asked, desperation creeping into her voice. "Stay low," another employee cautioned as they all huddled together. Mind-numbing fear coiled around Sarah like a python, squeezing out hope. She pressed her lips into a thin line, trying to suppress the rising panic. Then, a boy's voice broke through the fear. "Sarah, Ben." Relief flooded through her, pure and overwhelming. She turned to see him ducking in from the side, his face flushed and eyes wide. "Mommy, I got scared," he exclaimed, rushing toward her. Scooping him up in her arms, she clutched him close, reveling in the warmth of his small body against hers. "Sure, it's okay, baby," she whispered hurriedly, glancing at Tom. "We need to get the others to safety." As they regrouped, the employees formed a makeshift plan, whispering loudly in a chorus of fear. Tom and Sarah remained at the center, Ben safely nestled against Sarah's chest. She could feel his little heart racing beneath his shirt, matching her own frenzied pulse. "Look," one of the employees said, pushing a nearby shelf aside to reveal an additional exit that led outside. "We can make it through here. Everyone, follow us." Tom directed, his voice steadier now. At that moment, a loud crash echoed from the store floor. All heads turned, dread creeping in once more. Was it the end of their escape? The employees looked at each other uncertainly, fear sparking in their eyes. "Go, now," Sarah shouted once again, bolstered by exhaustion and the strength of her love for her child. With hands gripping Ben and each other tightly, they ventured toward the exit. Suddenly, another gunshot rang out fierce and unyielding. "Faster," Sarah urged, the urgency driving them forward. Outside loomed a world of confusion, where sirens wailed and chaos reigned. What awaited them in the light of day? As they burst into the open air, Sarah stopped momentarily. The sight sent chills through her. Would they find safety? Would they ever return to normal? The air outside felt different, heavy with a strange mix of urgency and terror. And in that moment, she realized getting out was just the beginning. What awaited them now felt heavier than anything she had encountered so far. But there was no turning back now. What came next would define them. Would they be able to stand strong as a community? Could they protect each other in this time of peril? As they raced into the unknown, a new sound emerged. The angry shouts of an unknown figure echoed in the distance. The streets outside the store transformed into a chaotic scene, people stumbling, voices raised in panic, and a sharp sting of fear kissing the air. It was a jarring shift from the pressure cooker inside. As Sarah caught her breath, she felt the weight of Ben, a small hand gripping hers. She instinctively pulled him closer, shielding him with her body, her eyes darting around for any sign of safety. "Tom, what do we do?" she whispered, her voice barely rising above the fray. "We stick together," Tom replied, his tone firm but laced with an urgency that sent another wave of adrenaline coursing through Sarah's veins. "There's a crowd gathering over there. We can blend in. Get low and move fast." The sound of more gunshots echoed from within the store, each bang a reminder of the fragility of the moment. Sarah's heart raced as they fled toward the group of people standing huddled near a parked bus. She could see fear etched on their faces, mirroring her own. The bus was a beacon of hope and terror at once. Would it be safe, or would it become another trap? Suddenly, a voice cut through the din, loud and commanding. "Everyone stay calm. I need you to move over here." A burly man with a dark jacket gestured urgently, leading a group toward the side of the bus. His eyes scanned the crowd, and Sarah couldn't help but feel drawn to his sense of authority and anchor in the chaos. "Mommy, I'm scared," Ben whimpered, breaking her from her thoughts. "I know, sweetheart," she soothed, kneeling down to look him in the eyes. "But we're here together. We're going to be okay." She stroked his hair, feeling the warmth radiate from him, a contrast to the tension gripping her heart. As they drew closer to the bus, she noticed a few parents shouting for their children, tears streaking down their faces as they frantically searched. It was a snapshot of desperation that pierced her heart. "Help us, please," cried one mother, her voice trembling. The man in the jacket stepped forward, his demeanor shifting from commanding to compassionate. "Gather the kids and the elderly over here. We'll make sure everyone is safe." Inspired by his confidence, Sarah took a deep breath and nodded to Tom. "We can help." With that decision, they began directing people. Sarah spotted a small girl cowering behind a car and beckoned her over. "Come with me, sweetie. We're going to safety." As they guided the children and the frightened toward the bus, the sirens wailed louder, almost drowning out the chaotic cries. Each face they encountered reflected their own anxiety. Yet together, they formed a patchwork of determination. Even in the haze of fear, there were glimpses of hope, a shared smile, a grateful nod, the simple act of reassurance that perhaps they would make it through as one. Then, an explosion rocked the ground, echoing down the street. Sarah's heart fell as she turned, instinctively pulling Ben closer against her. "I don't think this is a coincidence," Tom murmured, his expression tense. Just then, a commotion erupted on the other side of the bus as another group of individuals rushed toward them. Sarah could see the fear in their eyes, and it echoed back to her. Who were they running from? As she prepared herself to face whatever was coming, she felt a deep resolve swell within her. Together, they could be a force, a refuge amid the storm. "Hold on tight, Ben," she instructed, fear tightening her throat as the shouting grew louder. What had started as a simple day of shopping had turned into a battle for survival. With each passing moment, the thread of hope twisted tighter around her heart. Amid the chaos, would they find allies in the most unexpected places? Just as she pondered that question, she felt a chilling shock of recognition as a familiar figure pushed through the crowd. Could it really be him? The figure pushed through the crowd, moving with an urgency that was unmistakable. Sarah squinted, her heart thudding in her chest. As he came closer, the familiar lines of his face settled into view, a mix of determination and vulnerability. "Ethan," she gasped, the name tumbling from her lips like a whispered prayer. He looked as panicked as anyone else, but there was something else, a fire behind his eyes that told her he was ready to act. He spotted Sarah and Ben, and relief washed over his features, momentarily easing the tension knotting her stomach. "Are you okay?" he asked breathlessly, glancing quickly around them. Just trying to get everyone to safety," Sarah stammered, not daring to let go of Ben's hand. "We need to get to the bus." Ethan nodded, his gaze flicking toward the gathering panic. "I saw what happened inside. It's worse than we thought. There are more people trapped." "Trapped?" Sarah repeated, her pulse quickening. "What do you mean?" There were shots fired, hospitals already getting reports of injuries. "Someone needs to help them," he replied, urgency spilling from his tone. "Then let us usher as many to the bus as we can," Tom interjected, his voice rising above the chaos. "Ethan, you and Sarah take charge of leading the group. I can help with the kids." Sarah felt a weight settle on her shoulders, but with Ethan beside her, it felt less burdensome. "All right, everyone," she called, raising her voice high as she glanced at the growing crowd. "If you're with me, let us move quickly." She led Ben and the small girl she had rescued, eyes scanning for the nearest frightened faces to bring along. When she spotted a terrified teenager lingering near a streetlight, she gestured him forward. "You'll be okay. Stay close." Something shifted in the air as the gathered people began to understand they weren't alone in their fear. Every face that joined their small collective was a reminder that they were fighting for something together. Ethan fell into rhythm beside her, directing the flow of people with calm assurance. They weaved through the crowd, guiding panic-stricken families toward the safety of the bus. While they moved, the distant sound of approaching sirens turned from ominous to a glimmer of hope. Ben squeezed her hand tighter as they approached the bus. Sarah felt her throat tighten again, but not from fear. It was something else, something deeper, a sense of purpose ignited by their shared plight. As they reached the bus, Tom was ushering the last of the children into safety. Parents and children were finally reuniting in a flurry of tears and relieved cries, and Sarah felt an aching tenderness blossom in her chest. Then, a shout rang out from the back of the crowd. "They're coming." Sarah turned sharply, her heart racing as she searched the horizon. A new wave of people, disheveled and terrified, sprinted toward them, propelled by something primal. "Ethan," she cried, "what'll we do?" He looked at her, his expression shifting to one of determination. "Stay put. We protect them." A surge of adrenaline coursed through Sarah, blending fear with something fierce, a warrior mentality. This was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a fight for humanity, and she was ready to defend. But just as they braced themselves for what was to come, Sarah couldn't shake the creeping sensation that this moment would force them to confront something more significant than the chaos around them. Could they truly become a shelter in this storm? With the shouts growing louder and more panicked voices reaching her ears, she realized they had to find a way to stand firm, united against what was bearing down on them. Could it really be too late? The familiar echoes of screams filled the air anew, and Sarah clenched her jaw, rallying her resolve. This was the moment that would change everything. As the shouts intensified, Sarah felt her heart pounding in her ears. She called out again, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Stay together. We want tea, let anyone get left behind." Ethan remained close, eyes sharp, scanning faces in the crowd. The urgency around them heightened, each new scream urging them to act quicker. In those moments, Sarah realized how crucial their connection was. It wasn't just about survival. It was about a community coming together, stronger than fear. Look, Ethan pointed to a group stumbling toward them, some dragging others along who seemed too terrified to keep moving. We need to help them. At that moment, Sarah's focus shifted. She watched as a woman carrying a small child staggered forward, eyes wide with desperation, her breath quick and shallow. Sarah rushed to her, taking the child's weight, and hearing the mother let out a breath of gratitude. "Thank you," the woman whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "I thought I'd lost them." Ethan joined her, wrapping an arm around the mother's shoulder. "You're safe now. We're all going to get through this." The bus loomed ahead, a beacon in a storm. Sarah called others to assist the newcomers, creating a human chain that directed people towards safety. Each moment felt electrifying. The bonds they were forming were pure, rooted in shared fear and determination. They continued to usher people through the bus door when another shout erupted from behind them. Sarah turned to see a trio of men pushing through the crowd, their faces taut with anxiety and anger. "Get out of the way," one of them yelled, panic breaking through his voice. It struck Sarah like a jolt to fear, and fight in him rivaled what she felt inside. But then she saw his eyes darting around, and the realization hit her. He was just another scared soul trying to find his way. Hey, hold up." Ethan stepped forward, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "You don't need to push. We're all in this together. Just come with us." The men hesitated, uncertainty flickering across their faces. Sarah felt the tension in the air rise, almost suffocating. "Please," she said, her voice steady but imploring. "We're helping people get to safety. You could trust us. We're stronger together." For a brief moment, silence hung between them. Then one of the men, broad-shouldered and weary, nodded slowly, stepping toward them. Ethan and Sarah exchanged a glance, a silent agreement passing between them. They could do this. They had a they continued to lead others. A soft flicker of hope ignited within Sarah. The bus, filled with frightened faces, slowly transformed into a sanctuary. Each newcomer bringing their story, their struggle, into this fragile circle of humanity. Just then, a loud crash echoed from the back. Sarah turned as a rail-thin boy stumbled, purposefully breaking from the crowd, eyes wide, looking, searching. She recognized that look. It was the desperation to find someone, a loved one perhaps. "Wait," she shouted, breaking from the group. "Don't go out there alone." Ethan followed her, his expression now a mix of urgency and concern. Sarah, stay together. But she couldn't turn back now. This was personal. She had seen too much fear today, and if this boy needed help, she was ready to give it. The chaos pulsed like a heartbeat, and in that pulse, Sarah found her courage. "We'll find them, I promise," she called out to the boy. As they approached, the crowd surged once more, and Sarah understood. In that fleeting moment, they had to dive deeper into the fray. Could this act of bravery create a ripple of change? They pressed onward, the collective strength of strangers pushing them further. As Sarah plunged into the tumult, she realized this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about finding light in the darkest corners, about belonging in the midst of chaos. But what would they uncover next in this storm? Only time would tell. As Sarah pushed deeper into the chaos, every heartbeat pulsed with newfound determination. She could feel Ethan's steady presence beside her, an anchor amidst the whirlwind of fear. They navigated through the shouts and the cacophony of hopeful cries, following the boy who was so desperate to find someone. "Stay close," Sarah shouted, her voice fighting to be heard. In her heart, she could feel the flames of courage igniting, urging them forward toward bravery and compassion. Finally, they spotted the boy's family, a mother clutching a little girl, their faces etched with despair just beyond a swirling mass of people. Relief flooded through Sarah like cool water, but it was quickly overtaken by urgency. "This way," she called, waving them towards safety. The boy dashed ahead in a burst of energy, his small hand reaching out for his mother. A moment later, they collided, a beautiful reunion amidst so much fear. Tears flowed like rivers, softening the harshness surrounding them as the mother wrapped her arms protectively around both her children. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice quivering with emotion. "There's more of us. We need to keep moving," Sarah urged, adrenaline surging in her veins. She turned back to Ethan, who was already scanning the crowd, his eyes fierce and protective. With each person they helped, the bus transformed into a lifeline, filling with stories of resilience carved out of turmoil. Parents reunited with children, friends clasped hands tightly, and in those tiny moments, they ignited a collective strength that began to weave itself into the fabric of their makeshift community. Then, unexpectedly, a realization hit Sarah like a bolt of lightning. "Ethan," she exclaimed, her eyes gleaming with inspiration. "What if we turn this bus into a safe space? We could start gathering everyone who needs help." Ethan met her gaze, hope igniting behind his eyes. "You're right. Let's do it." They sprinted back toward the growing crowd, calling out for those still scattered in the chaos. "Everyone, join us. We're going to keep you safe on the bus. Come together." Each voice they raised was a beacon, their energy electrifying as more people squeezed through the entrance. The sense of unity began to form, a patchwork of strangers uniting against one common threat. Integrity blossomed, fortifying hearts where fear once reigned. Just then, Tom burst through the crowd, determination etched on his face, panting but resolute. "I gathered the elderly at the rear. We can help them up and get them in." Sarah's heart soared. "Yes, let us make this happen." Their small team filled with purpose forged ahead, anchoring themselves to each other as they continued to gather both strength and courage. With every grateful glance exchanged, they became a living tapestry of hope, weaving together their stories for a shared tomorrow. And then came the piercing cries of sirens in the distance, mingled with the chaos. Sarah caught sight of a tall figure in the back. It was a police officer moving in their direction. "Over here," she shouted, waving him toward them. "We're trying to get everyone to safety." His eyes scanned the crowd, acknowledging their effort. "That's great. We're coordinating across the area. Keep moving," their hearts buoyed by his words. Sarah turned as another tremor of urgency gripped her. She knew they were still caught in this storm, yet the power of solidarity began to spark, lighting up the edges of fear. Every moment felt precarious, yet in this shifting tide they forged a new path. Sarah, holding tightly to Ben, looked at Ethan and then across the illuminated faces gathered. They were in it together, and together they would transcend the darkness. A sudden hush washed over the crowd near the bus. Heads turned, eyes wide, and hearts listened intently. The sound of shuffling feet, and then all at once a commanding voice cut through the weight of uncertainty. "Listen up." The officer who had come closer took charge, swiftly directing everyone. "We are organizing evacuation in an orderly manner. I need your help. Everyone already on the bus. Please stay calm." Their spirits lifted with the officer at the helm, guiding them toward a flicker of safety. Named moments hung in the air: love, fear, resilience, and they surged forward with a newfound belief that fear could be conquered. "Let's make this happen," Ethan encouraged, locking eyes with Sarah. Together, she echoed, heart blazing with conviction. The momentum built, sweeping them forward with an unwavering force. Families huddled closer, and Sarah realized this bond they created went beyond skin deep. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, humanity shines through. Together they climbed onto the bus, gaining momentum like a wave crashing towards safety. Though the road ahead remained uncertain, they now moved as one, no longer individuals lost in a storm, but a community driven by hope, ready to face anything together. As they pulled away, Sarah glanced back at the hardware store that had been the epicenter of chaos. A sigh of relief escaped her lips, intermingled with disbelief and gratitude. Their lives had changed, undoubtedly and irrevocably. But amidst it all, she could feel something new awakening. They could build something greater than themselves. And through their unity, they could redefine their future one step at a time. Did I, in that moment, love one? Now, let me tell you about something critical. Each one of you reading these words plays a part in supporting stories that matter. If you loved this transformative tale, you need to subscribe now to the channel for more exclusive content that shines light in the darkness. Hit that like button to feed the algorithm so we can keep sharing powerful stories. I want to hear from you too. Comment your reactions and feelings about this ending below. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need this inspiration in their lives. Your support is what helps keep our community vibrant and strong. Stand with us